Comments, Duffy. No comments from your failed TR? Peace, Oakland. Welcome back to Gotham, Oakland. I am your host, Seneca Scott. Today we're going to be talking about the First Amendment, the lost art of debate. We're going to be going through some passages from one of my favorite books. We're going to be talking about how the Oaklandside manufactures consent to peddle power and influence for the powerful and elites who run our government and are running the city into the ground. So that video, Harold Duffey, he went down in flames. Let me tell you, he was pretty much in tears in court, repeating himself over and over and over again. He's ruining my reputation with his show, and he's lying about me. Duffey, we presented all of our evidence. Oh, by the way, the Oaklandside, who ran a story about this that was completely biased, and I'm going to show you carefully, painstakingly, so we can have a real debate about the subtle ways that they manufacture consent and actively serve as public relation for the powerful. But Harold Duffey basically tried to use the court to silence me because I'm exposing his corruption. Is he too broke to hire an attorney and file a libel lawsuit? He says he's going to, but I doubt he will. California has anti-SLAPP laws precisely for this reason. And these anti-SLAPP laws are not like the anti-SLAPP laws that you have for a restraining order where you simply have to pay my legal bills. The financial consequences are far, far greater. And so when Duffey ran back inside, he hit there with the Oaklandside reporter, Eli Worth. I waited outside for maybe 15 to 20 minutes. They did not come out, hiding. Eli has no reason to stay inside. Is he scared I'm going to ask him some questions? Who are they? The reporters can't be asked questions all of a sudden? Come on, what's going on here? And so, let me get to my point before I read my press release. I wrote a press release about this, and I fully intend on enacting my First Amendment lawsuit against the city of Oakland because it's going to be a major lawsuit, and I have to do it before the city goes bankrupt. Like I've been telling you, the city of Oakland is going bankrupt. It's going to happen very soon. That bankruptcy case we've been following out of Kentucky as related to the city spoiling loyalty pledges to Sierra Club and No Coal in Oakland instead of actually doing what's best for taxpayers, yeah, that's going to come back to bite us in a big, major way. And so, there was one more point I wanted to make about court. The judge even was giving him like hints, like there's other courts you can go to, but when I asked her about courts that I could go to, she was quiet. Oh, here's what the Oaklandside forgot to mention. They mentioned and referred to Duffey's declaration. They draw quotes from Duffey's legal declaration. One problem, I was never served that legal declaration, so technically it's not valid. And that happened in court where the judge asked him, did he serve me? He said no. And she said, well, we could either leave right now and you have to serve him properly, or you have to just drop it altogether. Duffey chose to drop it. So why is Oaklandside referring to a declaration I was never legally served, but somehow they got? Somehow they got. We're going to get into that in a second. So I had a press release that I put out. It's going to be small print. So I'm just putting it here so I can read it myself with no teleprompter. But the press release that I sent to the media yesterday that you will never see, nobody's going to interview me, no one cares, and there's a reason for that. It says, victory for the First Amendment, free speech prevails in Oakland, California. Harold Duffey's failed restraining order and Brandon Harami's collapsed temporary restraining order attempt exposed Oakland's unlawful campaign to silence dissent, basically me. Harold Duffey's failed restraining order is far more than a courtroom victory. It is proof that the First Amendment still matters, even as it comes under direct assault by government officials and their political operatives. This was not a legal dispute. It was an attempt to criminalize speech, my speech, to weaponize the courts against dissent, and to silence whistleblowers who expose corruption. That is the road to authoritarianism. I will not be silenced. I am preparing a First Amendment lawsuit against the city of Oakland, Harold Duffey, Brandon Harami, Councilmember Carol Fife, City Attorney Ryan Richardson, and former Public Ethics Administrator Simon Russell. Under 42 U.S.C. 1983, I have the right to hold them all accountable. not just as officials of a corrupt government, but as individuals who use their offices and platforms to retaliate, defame, and coordinate attacks on my protected speech. The evidence is clear. The city of Oakland first filed a temporary restraining order to shield Mayor Shingtao, former Mayor Shingtao's staffer Brandon Harami, in an effort to silence me. And after that case was settled, Harami personally attempted to resurrect the exact same temporary restraining order and got it approved by a judge, word from word, and it was thrown out. This failure proved that the city's original filing was equally unconstitutional. This is not a coincidence. It is a coordinated strategy of retaliation. It is unlawful. It is an abuse of power, and it is an insult to every Oaklander who values freedom of speech. Just as troubling is the role of the Oaklandside, the reporting arrives with the timing and precision that suggests direct coordination with the very political operatives and funders driving these attacks. When a media outlet shares the same financial backers as the politicians it covers and then echoes their narratives in lockstep, it ceases to be journalism and becomes propaganda. Rather than serving as a watchdog for the people, Oaklandside had chosen to act as an enforcer for the powerful, laundering their retaliation through the veneer of nonprofit news. So my victory against Harold Duffey is only the beginning. This pattern of intimidation cannot and will not stand if government officials can collude with members of the media and media operatives to smear reputation, crush dissent, and punish critics in court. Then the First Amendment is nothing but a piece of paper. If they succeed in Oakland, California, they will try it everywhere. And this is why I fight. The First Amendment is non-negotiable. It is the thin line between a free people and a society where the truth itself is outlawed. So let's get into that Oaklandside article. And I want to lay out how the media manufactures consent and how sometimes it's like subtle and sometimes it's not so subtle. First, we just need to read the article itself. Okay. Activists lose, Oakland official loses restraining order case against activists. And the title itself, activists, I'm sorry, I'm an organizer, I'm an activist, I'm a media personality, I have my own podcast, I'm a politician, activist. We'll get into that though. Assistant City Administrator Harold Duffey said he may pursue a defamation case against Senator Scott. Right away, they're saying what he may do. He lost. Scott said that his right to free speech was infringed. He's planning to sue Duffey and the city. And I'm not going to read the whole thing verbatim. Actually, yeah, I don't want to read the whole other thing. But look, I'm going to go through why it's messed up. They go through, they give me my part first. But here's the thing. They go through Duffey. They give Duffey's side several times. They don't give any context to my side. They also said that Duffey believed if Scott had defamed him, he could pursue other similar remedies. After that, he takes the judge's advice, which is pretty much what she's giving him. She gave me no advice, though. They also said that Duffey says, I've never been, so this is what's interesting. He says, I've never received funds, I've never been offered federal immunity. These statements are false, malicious, and serve no purpose. Okay, they gave him my quote, they gave him his quote. That should be the end of it. But no, they mentioned that federal prosecutors has not accused him of any wrongdoing, and then they give him the same quote again. They give him another quote. I think they gave him three. Let me go check. Duffey told the job. Okay, that's my quote here. I'm going to pursue defamation. That's another quote. Okay, that's two quotes. You have three quotes. How does Duffey get four quotes? How does Duffey get four quotes and I get one? So let's go into this for a second, because this is some notes I want to give about how they manufacture consent. So here's the breakdown. The first is the structure and presentation. So the article alternates between Duffey's claims in my response, giving both sides space. They do that legitimately. It opens with the court's decision favoring myself, but then immediately shifts to Duffey's allegations and reasoning, which takes up a substantial portion of the middle of the article. So while my perspective is included both at the hearing and via a written statement, but less detail is given compared to Duffey's filings and courtroom remarks. Another issue. There are multiple quotes from Harold Duffey during the interview and hearings. The reference to his legal filings, his declaration denying the bribery and immunity claim, the same declaration that was never served to me, that Oaklandside is well aware was never served to me. There's more context about his professional status, calling him one of the highest ranking officials in Oakland. An explicit note saying that the federal prosecutors have not accused him of any wrongdoing, and if he blew the whistle and snitched, why would they ever say that? And his emotional stance, ridiculous, totally untrue, is heavily emphasized. However, when it comes to my side, yes, it does mention I won. They have to. It's a statement of facts. They can't get around that. But a shorter courtroom summary, he invoked his free speech rights and asked about remedies against harassment by officials. And his strongest quotes comes only from a written statement, no detailed testimony. And he is described as an activist who helped organize the recall, which provides some context but less institutional weight compared to Duffey's description. For example, did you know I used to be a high-ranking union official and I used to be the East Bay director for SEIU 1021? Oaklandside never mentions that. I went to Cornell University, they never mention that. They mention I'm a civil rights legacy, Martin Luther King, Greta Scott King, Scott King. They never mention that. No, they don't mention that. There's more. Potential imbalances, time and detail. Duffey's narrative, his denial, reputation of defense, and potential defamation suit is given far more elaboration than my framing of free speech and whistleblowing. Like, somehow it's more important than a government official who is demonstrably failing us. And Oaklandside has gotten all of the Duffey dossier that I have, so they know that Duffey was doing things that were corrupt. They know this, but yet they still choose to defend him. So they give more authority and framing. Duffey is portrayed as a high-ranking official, while myself is simply described as an activist. This adds a subtle imbalance in perceived credibility. There's also the reinforcement of Duffey's innocence. Reinforced, this article reminds readers more than once that federal prosecutors have not accused him of any wrongdoing. My allegations, by contrast, were presented but quickly undercut by Duffey's denials. So in terms of overall fairness, this article is factually straightforward. Oaklandside does a good job of that. By the judge's rulings, Duffey's claims, my response, and the legal context all being included. However, the balance tilts slightly toward Duffey in terms of space, detail, and official framing. Readers are more likely to walk away with a stronger sense of Duffey's denial and position than of my broader argument about government overreach and free speech. So the verdict is that while this article is not overtly biased, it is uneven in emphasis. It reads as a fact-based reporting, yet the weight of detail and repetition subtly favors Duffey's perspective, even though he is lost in court. Even though he lost in court. Okay? Think about that. All right, what else I got? Oh, my favorite book. So progressives hate to debate. I have run for 2 offices, city council in 2020 and mayor in 2022, and I have never had a single debate. We always do these things in Oakland called forums. And so when I ask progressives, why are we doing these forums? Why won't anyone debate? Why would no one debate? The answer that they always give is that debates are arguments and we don't want to do all that. People just need the information, and that people with the information that they give can make the right decision. Not only is that poppycock, it's very, very wrong, in my opinion. And so one of my favorite books, Revolt of the Elites and the Betrayal of Democracy by Christopher Lasch. This book was written and published in the 1990s, and let me tell you, when I read this book in maybe 2021, maybe late 2020, my mind was absolutely blown. And so much in here was applicable to the things that I was seeing and the betrayal of the democracy that I was witnessing in the city of Oakland. And so you should get this book, but I'm going to read one passage for you. And this comes from a chapter titled The Lost Art of Argument. A short passage from this book. There's so much more to it, but jumping right in like a short story, we're talking about the importance of debate. Remember, the revolt of the elites and the betrayal of democracy. And the chapter is The Lost Art of Argument. Since the public no longer participates in debates on national issues, it has no reason to inform itself about civic affairs. It is the decay of public debate, not the school system, bad as it is, that makes the public ill-informed. Notwithstanding the wonders of an age of information, when debate becomes a lost art, information, even though it may be readily available, makes no impression. What democracy requires is vigorous public debate, not information. Of course it needs information too, but the kind of information it needs can only be generated by debate. We do not know what we need to know until we ask the right question, and we can identify the right questions only by subjecting our own ideas about the world to the test of public controversy. Information, usually seen as the precondition of debate, is better understood as its byproduct. When we get into arguments that fully focus and engage our attention, we become avid seekers of relevant information. Otherwise, we take in information passively, if we take it in at all. And this is the damage that the forums have had to Oakland's local democracy. The lack of debate has shielded elected officials from accountability from people who may want to take their jobs, so the incumbents have even more of an advantage because they can sit there and give more of an insider perspective on how they're failing and alienate the people who don't have the closed session knowledge or who aren't locked up to city policy. And then they can withstand any scrutiny because these forums only give you like 1 minute or 2 minutes to answer these complex and nuanced questions that give no room for dissent or counter arguments. This is intentional. Progressives do this intentionally because they know that their arguments cannot stand up to public controversy. They know that the weight of their arguments and their failed policies collapse under the weight of their own contradiction. So they need the Oaklandside to cover for them. They need KTVU to cover for them. They need KQED to cover for them because they're fake news. They're propaganda here to manufacture consent and cover for the people in government who are failing us. But you need only to look around, Oakland. You need only to drive through. If you're insulated in the hills and you never come south of the 580 and you're somehow able to miss the fact that the entire neighborhoods south of the 580, West Oakland, the Little Saigon, District 6, District 7, District 5, District 3, parts of District 1 look crazy. If you're somehow able to carefully avoid seeing any of that because you're so elite and you're so spoiled and you're such in your little bubble, that's shameful because you're not enjoying the best of Oakland, to be honest with you. But beyond that, everyone knows what's going on. We were letting them lie to us. The progressives came out with the crimes down lie. What did I tell you? Soon as it warmed up, crime would explode. Since I made that podcast 2 weeks ago, we have seen like 6 murders in Oakland and about over 20 people shot. Okay? Bars and strikes, calling them once again. While people in government are flailing and lying to you. That charter amendment I've been talking about, all of a sudden, Oakland wants to blame everything on the charter. I can't do anything, the charter. Barbara Lee, how do you feel about this encampment abatement policy? What are your thoughts on it? Well, it doesn't matter what my thoughts are because I have no control over it because of the charter. You do. You may have to break a tie, Mayor Lee. So you should maybe think about breaking a tie. You do have to have thoughts on it. You're telling me you don't have any thoughts on such a controversial and impactful policy? Really? No thoughts? Really? In the media? Okay. They let her get away with it. Not a single follow-up question, no scrutiny. Why? Because Barbara Lee secretly wants the encampment abatement policy. Of course she does. Who wants their city looking like this? She's hoping that Councilmember Ken Houston can get it pushed through. So she's like, all I can do is stay out the way. I can't advocate for it because I'm a coward, but I'll stay out your way and I just won't say anything. That's how they operate. The charter only applies as a deterrent when the mayor and council are not working together. So if the mayor and the council have a different agenda, yes, the city charter can derail that agenda because council can basically do whatever they want with the budget and they can pass whatever legislation they want. And if the mayor doesn't like the legislation they pass, she can have the city administrator and police chief not say anything. By the way, the news agency that ran that story that said the mayor's only power was to hire and fire the police chief blatantly lied to us. The mayor hires and fires the city administrator. So stop acting like they're this separate independent entity that has no responsibility of the mayor. That's such a lie. All of this charter talk is for one reason, to get you to not focus on their failures and the fact that their policy failures from 2019 since the progressive took over council, which is the most important entity to control because that's who controls the budget and the money and the policies. So council collectively does have more power than the mayor. Yes. So when council went majority progressive in 2019, that's when you saw this insidious agenda. If you look at any Google Maps out there, what you will see is that pre-2019 when Nikki Bass swore in, including, check out East 12th Street. Pull up Google Maps and look at East 12th Street any year to 2018. Then once you get to 2019, within 6 months, boom, Oakland favela. And it stayed there until she left. It stayed there until she left, intentionally. They want this. You need to wake up, okay? I can qualify it even more. More about this charter. Not a single, you name me. I cannot wait. Somebody debate me. I am throwing down the gauntlet. Somebody who's progressive, debate me on this charter stuff and why they're using it all of a sudden. Here's what I have to say. Name me one elected official who've ever mentioned the city charter in writing or otherwise in their election material as a qualification as why you should vote for them or as an identifier of Oakland's problems. You know who's the only person to do that since 1998? You're looking at him. You're looking at him. When I ran for mayor in 2022, my highest priority, my number one priority was the charter amendment. So now all of a sudden in 2025 it's everyone's highest priority. The charter is not applicable right now. The mayor and city council get along great. They're passing, the mayor has had their budget passed by city council since Sheng Tao took office, and council and the mayor became a perfect progressive circle, okay? So Sheng Tao's budget got passed by council. No amendments. Nothing really happened. Kevin Jenkins, that's interim mayor, his budget was passed by council. No problem. Barbara Lee's budget will be passed by council. They're not going to go against the queen. Blah, blah, Lee. Come on now, y'all. So when the mayor and council get along, the charter's not an excuse, but they're using it anyway. They want to use Section 218 as an excuse. The city council doesn't have to direct public works or anyone else to get things done. They can pass policies. They can talk to the mayor. They can talk to city administrator's office, and they can use for the purpose of inquiry, talk to other directors. We've talked about 218 in earlier episodes. How come everything I talked about earlier, Gotham, Oakland, season 1, we talked a lot about Section 218 and how people were violating it. A violation of Section 218 is a misdemeanor punishable by forfeiture of office and up to 1 year in jail. And we prove and show smoking guns that Nikki Fortunato Bass violated Section 218. We show smoking guns that Carol Fife violated 218. We show smoking guns that Rebecca Kaplan violated 218. And then right after I start making those episodes, all of a sudden you hear them talk about, I can't do anything because of Section 218. Oakland, we're more sophisticated than this. I know we are. There's no reason for you to be falling for this stuff. And if this is the first time this information is being presented to you, that's fine. And if you don't believe what I'm saying, fact check me. But if you do that, and after you find out what I'm saying is all right, because I speak facts, baby. Y'all know that. That's why you never hear progressive saying nothing about Gotham, Oakland. And when you realize that, make sure you come back and hold them accountable. So here is my charter amendment idea. And I'm just taking it from the Spur report, but since everybody wants to forget that Spur came out with Making Government Work in a report in November of 2021 that laid out a very good charter amendment, let me repeat it for you. Number one, we have too many commissions. We need to disband the majority of these commissions, including the police commission. Number two, we need an odd number city council, not an even number city council. What does at-large even do? We could add another at-large to have an odd number for 9, but I don't think we need 2 people who do nothing. So let's get rid of at-large altogether. We don't need it. We don't need it. That saves us money. That saves us confusion. That saves us a seat. So now we have an odd number. So we don't have ties. Okay, let's give the mayor line item budget veto so they have influence over their own budget. Let's give the mayor legislative veto so that when city council passes something they may not want, the mayor can veto it and send them back to the table. That gives the mayor a lot more power. That's called a traditional strong mayor. That's what Long Beach has. That's what San Francisco has. That's what Los Angeles has. That's what most major cities have. We also need a controller. We only have a city auditor. The city auditor is great. They've been doing a great job. Courtney Ruby, now Michael Houston, but they never have any money. Their budget is so small compared to the size of Oakland's overall budget. The city auditor's department needs more money. We need to have an independent office of a controller so they can veto things like city council passing legislation that the city can afford to avoid things like what's about to happen in the next couple months, bankruptcy. Maybe too late, but I'm giving you my ideas anyway. Okay, what else was there? There was some more things. They did the term limits. They paid council more. They did those last time when they watered down charter amendments, so we already took care of those. There may be one more that I'm forgetting, but that's pretty much what I think we should do. We also need to get rid of ranked choice voting. All of a sudden, that disappeared from conversation. You notice that? Because progressives are in charge and they love ranked choice voting. You know why they love ranked choice voting? Because they love voter suppression. Progressives don't want you to vote. Haven't you noticed that people in the hood don't vote and they love it that way? They love it that way because they can count on who's going to vote or who's not, and they know the majority of people who are going to vote are people who are listening to their message sometimes. So they would rather working class people not vote. Why? People vote in their own best interests. People vote in their own best interests. So if people from District 7 who votes the least, Deep East Oakland, that's the most messed up, or District 6 that votes the second least, that's the second most, District 5 votes the second least, and they're the second most messed up around Fruitvale. If they actually started voting, you think they would vote for people who are ignoring their concerns, that were telling them crime is down when they see in front of their face it's not? No, they wouldn't vote for these people, and they know it. So they don't care about them voting. They don't care. That's why ranked choice voting. Ranked choice voting is guaranteed voter suppression. There's not a single place it's been implemented in the United States of America where ranked choice voting has increased the number or percentages of people vote. As a matter of fact, it decreases it by an average of 10% the very first election. An average. Anyway, it definitely has done that in Oakland. It has done demonstrable and significant harm to Oakland's local democracy. And progressives cheer for it. What does that tell you? What does that tell you? The next election in Oakland, California, we should demand debates. We should demand debate. No more forums, debates. Peace, Oakland. I love you. Scary times. Hold your loved ones tight. You never know what's going on out here. We have entered into a new level of political violence with the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Not good. Now we have HBCUs on lockdown because they're being threatened in retaliation by who knows what. This could be a government op. This could be the real thing. Who knows what's going on? But one thing I do know, with the violence, is not the answer. People need to chill out. If you're cheering for violence or you're posting any slick shit and you ain't got no guns and you ain't ready to pull the trigger yourself, you need to chill out, seriously. That is not empathetic. That is not the light. That is darkness. And as Maya Angelou said, everything humans do is human nature. It exists in you and it exists in me. The light and the darkness. It's when you become unaware of your own capacity for evil that you're most likely to succumb to it. So watch yourselves out there. I love you. Peace. Take care.
Yo, I swear it's only up from here. Yo, I swear it's only up from here. Yo, I swear it's only up from here. Yo, I swear it's only up from here.